One of the first things that comes to mind when you look at any diagram of evolution is that the time scales are very, very long, in the order of millions of years. This is how long it took Mother Nature to generate the crown of creation, us, humans. Your kids, your grandchildren, are going to look exactly like you. So do you compared to your great-great-great-grandfathers. But now, for the first time in history, we can actually take over, change evolution, change the course of things, speed it up, create new type of species, human version 2.0. I flew here 2 days ago in an airplane, and the thing is, I didn't really have a lot of choices when it comes to flying here. I could choose the airline, the timing, but that's about it. I didn't really have a lot of control, but I wanted to. What if I wanted to create my own wings and fly myself on my own accord? If I got it for evolution to do it, it's going to take millions of years, maybe, if it is even good for us to have wings, a little bump in the shoulder, a little feather here before it exists. But, you know, even though they say that we have choices on airlines, we don't really have a lot of choice here. Well, turns out we do, because we can actually build things ourselves. We know how to build wings, we know the mechanics of them, we can put them on our arms and start flapping them, but it won't feel like we actually control the wings until we plug them into our brains. Once we plug something to the brain immediately assumes control of that, and we feel it's part of us. Now, how can we do something like that? How can we plug something to the brain? Well, turns out we know the language of the brain. The brain speaks in electrochemical signals, and if we just turn the flapping of the wings into the signal of the brain, we can speak to it. The brain is amazing in interpreting signals and finding meaning in them on its own. This is what it's good for, and we know it from all of our lives. Babies, when they're born, are not taught by anyone how to see. They just get bombarded with visuals of orientations and shapes and colors, and somehow their brain figures it out, and they start seeing. So we can actually do the same things. Put something in the brain and let the brain do its magic. The thing about it is if we start putting chips inside people's brains, we can do more than that. We can actually enhance our current capabilities. For instance, communication. If I have a chip in my brain and you have one in your brain, I can actually broadcast my thoughts to you without language. Right now, language is a pretty slow process. I can speak in about 150 words, but I can think 600 words. There's a big barrier there. For me, it's even a smaller one because I speak much faster, and when I'm excited, it's even faster, but still slower than anything. I still have to spend time picking nouns and adjectives and verbs and putting them together and then broadcasting them to you. Well, if I have a chip in my brain, I can just use wireless technology to communicate everything to you right away. A 1-second TED Talk instead of 18 minutes. Really, really fast way to communicate ideas. The thing is, it doesn't just end there. We can actually use the fact that we have a chip in our brain to outsource thinking, to think of things that we're not good at and have computers solve them for us. For instance, if I ask you to tell me what's the best next move for the black pieces in this chessboard, it's going to take you a lot of time to figure out if you can even do it yourself, because we're not really good at it. Machines are much better than us in doing that. Well, if we have a machine in our brain, it might just take over and do it for us. We know that machines plus humans could be even better than any machine in the room. And we can really start doing things speedily and in a much better way. The thing that's amazing is that it won't feel like we're outsourcing anything. It will just feel like we're thinking. The same way, if I ask you to tell me how much is 6 times 7, you don't really say, I'm going to outsource that to the prefrontal lobe and get the answer. It just happens. And you feel like you're thinking it, and it comes out. 42. It just appears. So if we can start outsourcing things in our brain, the brain is going to assume it's part of it, and it will just do it for us. And it doesn't end with thinking. It could be also feeling. Feeling is just a word that we have invented for different processes in the brain. The brain doesn't know what feeling is compared to thinking. It just thinks that we have full control over and think we have some control over. That's all. And if we can start feeling and thinking using those chips, we can actually do even more than that. We can actually allocate our decision-making processes to these chips in the same way. So, for instance, we take decisions that we're not good at, and we have them happen to us automatically. You want to think about the next book to read. Instead of looking at Amazon and looking at recommendations, you will just kind of have it in your brain, and you will just feel that you want to read this book. Or the healthcare of us. is going to be something that we're going to be able to use machines to think better about. So you're just going to feel that you want to have the salad because the chip is going to allocate resources to telling you what you need for your body. Or even more complex choices, decision-making that is really, really beyond us, like voting. We know that people vote usually in an uninformed way, and they actually typically vote against their best interests. Now, we can actually have these chips do something that is much more complex and choose what we're going to vote for. There's no reason to think that our thinking is in any way better than the thinking of a machine inside our head. In fact, we probably can tell that our thinking is limited by so many biases that you can figure out, or by the things we can think based on the things we know. Here's what I mean by that. This guy is a professor in Germany who have been born without his left hand. So in the course of his lifetime, he was given a prosthetic hand that he can control now. Now, because this was made by machine, there's things he can do that you cannot do, like rotate his hand around its axis 360 degrees. So he can actually think thoughts that you cannot think, like I want to put a light bulb in one movement, or I need to stop my hand from rotating. All those thoughts don't exist for you, which means that you don't have this in your vocabulary. Your brain cannot summon the ideas. There's a French author that I really like in the 17th century, La Rochefoucauld, who said something that I really found relevant. He said, people would not have fallen in love if someone hadn't told them that love exists. What other things do we not experience because our brain cannot think about them? Here's where it becomes really, really cool. It doesn't just end there. If we can put those chips in our brain, we can actually also end death. That's right. The idea of being alive, for the most part, is having our brain continuously exist. Our bodies, we can replace part of. We can replace our hearts, our livers, our kidneys. So as long as we can keep replacing body parts, we can actually extend life beyond what we used to have. This will change everything. If you suddenly live to age 400, you can actually think about things differently. Relationships. What does it mean to marry someone age 30 if you're going to live 400 years with them? You might want to actually have different choices there. Careers. Right now, you basically get a career and you continue. Well, I got a PhD. How many can I get in my lifetime? Maybe 10? What order should I get them in? Mortgage, 30 years seem like nothing if you live to 400. And in fact, if we start replacing our bodies, we don't have to do it just because we're sick. We can do it also because we want to just change. So you start as a white woman, and at age 60, you say, I want to be an Asian man for a while, or maybe I want to now change my hairstyle or change everything. You can actually keep different identities in your life as long as your brain, your consciousness remains the same. And it doesn't just end with these. We can go beyond. We don't have to remain kind of in favor of the original evolutionary setup. We can say, for 20 years, I want to have a Picasso face. I want to move everything around, shuffle my face. The idea is that as long as that we feed things to the brain in the same way, the brain doesn't care. It doesn't care where the eyes start. Why put two eyes in the front looking at the same thing? It's actually giving us 3D vision. But maybe put one in the back, like my teachers used to have in school. You can see things in both directions. Why do you keep our noses so high? Most of the smells are down here. You wouldn't buy a laptop for 80 years. Why keep the same body for the same 80 years if you can keep replacing and changing things all the time? When I was a young kid, there was a TV series that I really loved called The $6 Million Man. It was a TV series about this guy who basically had every part of his body replaced, and he was running faster, he was stronger. And the thing is, when I was a kid, this TV series was in the science fiction domain. As we get older, this moves to a different category. The only thing in science fiction about this TV series right now is the price. Now for $6 million, with the healthcare system, you can probably replace a finger. You can't really put the entire body. But the idea is nothing here in science fiction. In fact, we can do a lot more than the things we just have right now. We can actually start plugging devices that are beyond the ones that we're born with into our body. So if you take, instead of one eye, an infrared camera and feed it into the brain, it's going to learn somehow how to see, and you can start seeing infrared. If you work as a TSA agent, you might want to see more things than your human eye can give you. If you work in construction or in movement, you might want to put a prosthetic arm that's going to help you lift pianos just with the power of your hands. Maybe if you're driving a lot, you want to plug the car into your stomach, and when you're running on empty, you're actually going to feel hungry, and you would know that the car needs a little bit of fuel. Or you can actually plug your stock portfolio to your brain, so you feel maybe pain when your stocks fall down, and pleasure and joy when they go up. You can actually feel the market. Or if you're really bad on empathy, You can go on a date and have a little machinery in your eyes analyze the other person and tell you if you're doing well on micro-expression on the date. That's where we're heading. And none of that is science fiction. In fact, what's remarkable is everything I told you up to now are things that are already being worked at by some academic labs. Replacing brain parts, connecting brains to brains and communicating, replacing our existing devices, and even curing blindness and deafness by putting retinal implants and cochlear implants that allow us to control things that we didn't have when we were born. Now, some of you might say, well, it sounds like science fiction even if you're building it right now, because who would let you put something in their brain? And here is the magic. There's an analogy here that helps me understand where it's happening. In 1950, people felt the same about our bodies. They were sacred temples, and who would actually want to put something in the body? But fast forward 70 years to today, 1 out of 4 American girls for her 16th birthday asked her parents if she can get breast implants. Suddenly, it doesn't feel that foreign to us. We all accept that we can put stuff in our body. So here's how it's going to happen, I think, for these devices. We're going to maybe start by having one wealthy individual put a chip in his brain and maybe do high-frequency training in his mind much faster. It's going to be great for him. He's going to be even wealthier. And then Silicon Valley is going to jump and say, you know, we want to also maybe put some stuff in our brain and use that to get some advantage. And it's going to start lowering the prices, and it becomes commercial. And before long, you can't live life without having this thing in your brain. Now, what's amazing in this is when I thought about that, I realized that this is exactly how evolution works. You start with a mutation by one individual. It's amazing, it's advantageous. And then it just takes over because everyone needs it. And in one generation, we all have this thing. The only thing that's different between this evolution and the old-fashioned one is that the old-fashioned one was driven by natural selection, and the current one is purely intelligent designed. And there's something here that I want to end with that really struck a chord with me that makes me understand where it's heading. When I looked at all of those academic researchers that got us to where we are right now, one of them stood out to me, the one about curing blindness. Because it reminded me of this guy about 2017 years ago who was the first to give sight to the blind. And when he did that, we declared him God. And in many ways, I think that we're getting to the same place right now, where we realize that we're getting to play gods. And what's amazing about that is that as we get to play gods, we get to choose the world we live in and define it. But we also get to understand the most interesting thing about the universe. Consciousness, the essence of who we are. That's the one thing we're still missing, the kernel of our identity. I was battling for a while with that. If you can replace everything in your brain, what is you that you cannot be replacing? And a few weeks ago when I was driving a car, a friend of mine called me and I was complaining. I said, I'm stuck in traffic. And he said, you're not stuck in traffic. You are traffic. And in that sense, I feel that maybe this is the answer. Maybe there is no one part that is us. Maybe all of them together make us. Just when you put them in the right format, the integration of all of the entities makes us who we are. Which means that in the next couple of years, when all of those building blocks are going to form into a building that we can build together, of building new humans, we actually will understand the essence of what it is to be human. We'll understand the most interesting thing in the universe, which is us. Thank you.